So good day, I'm Megan Lagundi. So today we are analyzing the documentary The True Cost. So this film explores the stark contrast between the global glamour of fashion industry and the grim reality of its production. So while consumers sees a finished product, as supply chain students, we see a complex network of labor, logistics, and raw materials. So today I will break down how the fast fashion model operates and why its current configuration is reaching a breaking point. So, fast fashion is defined as a supply chain configuration focused on extreme speed and cost minimization. So, it's not just a retail strategy, it is a high velocity logistical model. So, by compressing lead times, brands can move from design to retail in under 3 weeks. So, this requires a highly responsive supply chain. But as we will see, this responsiveness often comes at the expense of stability and ethics. So it's mainly about efficiency versus resilience. So while the fast fashion supply chain excels in traditional metrics like cost efficiency and speed, it fails in sustainability and risk management. So I argue that a truly optimized supply chain must account for the true cost of sourcing, including social and environmental impacts, in order to remain resilient and successful in the long term. So let's look at the strategic sourcing. So the film shows how brands exert massive pressure on factories in developing these nations to lower prices. So this creates a race to the bottom in supply selection. So when price is the only variable that matters, factory owners are forced to ignore safety protocols just to remain competitive. So this is a fundamental failure in how we choose and evaluate our global partners. The 2013 Rana Plaza collapse is a prime example of adversarial purchasing. So instead of building long-term strategic relationships, brands often treat suppliers as disposable. By ignoring risk management and sourcing, these companies leave themselves vulnerable to massive disruptions and reputational damage. So, a supply chain built on these unsafe facilities is not efficient. It is fragile and prone to catastrophic failure. So, we must also consider sustainable sourcing. So, the film highlights the environmental destruction, which is caused by leather tanning and chemical heavy cotton farming. So, from an SCM perspective, if a supply chain destroys its own raw material base like clean water and its arable land, it is inherently unstable. So, you cannot have a functioning supply chain if the environment providing your materials is being poisoned and depleted. My insight here is that sustainable sourcing is not just a moral choice, it is a business necessity. A supply chain that ignores its environmental footprint is creating hidden costs that will eventually lead to supply shortages and higher prices. So, to be truly efficient, a manager must ensure the entire sourcing process is regenerative, not just extractive. So let's take a look at the logistics. So the industry has moved from 4 seasons a year to 52 micro seasons. So this relies on a hyper accelerated just in time or JIT inventory model. So while high inventory turnover is usually a sign of success, the film actually shows that this speed is often forced. So this creates a massive bullwhip effect where a small change in consumer demand creates a tidal wave of pressure on the workers at the bottom. This focus on speed impacts facilities management. So, to meet impossible deadlines, workers are often forced to work in cramped, unsafe conditions. So, in SCM, we talk about facility utilization, but the documentary shows that overutilizing a facility without maintaining standards leads to long term failure. So, real efficiency requires a balance between the speed of machines and the safety of its people. So we need to reevaluate inventory costs. So usually we only calculate the cost of storing a product, but in fast fashion, the holding cost is kept low for the brand while the social cost is pushed onto the supplier. So true SEM efficiency requires balancing these variables. So we cannot call a system efficient if it relies on shifting the burden of cost onto the most vulnerable parts of the chain. So let's look at the role of the IT or the information technology. So a major issue in the true cost is the lack of visibility. So many brands claim that they didn't know which subcontractors were making their clothes. So this is a failure on end-to-end visibility. So in a modern supply chain, information is just as important as the physical product. So if you don't have the data on your suppliers, you aren't actually managing your chain. The solution is better supply chain management systems. So by using technology to track every step of production, we can ensure compliance and also safety. So transparency protocols aren't just for PR, they are essential for managing risk. So a resilient supply chain requires real-time information to identify and fix problems before they become disasters. So we need cross-functional integration. So this means that the designers, the logistics team, and the sourcing managers all need to be on the same page regarding ethics and sustainability. So when information flows freely across the company, it becomes much easier to make decisions that protect both the brand's reputation and the workers' lives. So to conclude, the fast fashion model violates the goal of designing a resilient, efficient supply chain. So it prioritizes short-term speed over long-term health. So we have seen that efficiency in SEM cannot be defined solely by the lowest price. So a truly efficient system is the one that can sustain itself over time without causing human or environmental collapse. So as a management engineering student, our job is to keep moving products and making customers satisfied. But we must redefine what satisfaction means. So we should integrate ethical sourcing and sustainable logistics. So we can turn the supply chain into a competitive advantage. So the film is a reminder that we have the power to build a better system. So that is all. Thank you for your time.